everybody. It's nice to see all of you. So we're here to talk about jobs. We think jobs are good. More jobs are better. Okay, that's it. That's it. We're here to talk about jobs, the jobs of today, the jobs of tomorrow. This is obviously a national conversation, but it's also a critical issue in high tech. The labor market is lumpy, much as we'd like it not to be. A software company can be laying off people over here, and across the street, the software company can be having massive labor shortages. And so how do we fix this? Are we going to figure out this problem with better degree programs, more targeted education? Does any of it matter? Because robots will take all the jobs. And so our panelists think about this issue every day. On my immediate left is Peter Lubbers, who's a senior program manager at Google in charge of all developer training. Next to him, Gayle McDowell, who's the founder and CEO of Career Cup and the author of the Cracking the Interview book series, and Greg Estes, who is vice president of developer marketing at NVIDIA. So we're going to talk for about 20 minutes, and if we haven't answered all of your questions, you should get to us afterwards. So Greg, set this up for us. What's the issue that you worry most about at NVIDIA? Do we need to worry about the impact that AI is having on high tech in the world? Give us an overview, if you don't mind.
Well, from our standpoint, we have about 10 or 11,000 employees, and we're very focused on artificial intelligence. It's a singular engine that's driving us because NVIDIA believes that it is the transformative technology of our generation, right? So we're looking to hire the best and brightest of AI engineers ourselves, from self-driving car programs. We're working on things around healthcare, working around things around building platforms, et cetera. So we have our own needs. But larger than that, we're looking at how, from our standpoint, our GPUs are very involved in training in AI, and we're kind of ubiquitous in that area. So we want to create a developer community all around the world, across different parts of the platform in different vertical markets. And the question is, how can we help, working with companies like Udacity, to enable all of these engineers with these skills? And the tough thing is, and I think the core answer to your question is, what we're trying to figure out is, if you're not lucky enough to go to Stanford and be in Dr. Fei-Fei Li's class or whatever, where you have a world-class artificial intelligence expert working with you, and you're out in the heartland of America, or you're out wherever you are in other countries, how can you get that same level of education? How can you get that leading edge work to work with Google's TensorFlow, or to learn how to program an AI system for robotics, or any one of a number of things? And that's how we see it. And so our focus is, from a developer standpoint, is to build this platform so that people can learn to do that and get that hands-on experience that's going to let them lead to be able to get those jobs no matter where they live.
Right. And Peter, are you approaching this problem the same way, or because Google is primarily a software company, do you guys look at it with a slightly different tilt?
Very much, a pretty similar way. We work very closely with Udacity on creating all these great courses, and we do that from a sort of a developer relations perspective. And so we look at that we want to inspire and train developers globally, and at Google we like to do that at the largest scale possible. And so I think we come at it similar in similar angle, where we just want to equip everybody equally with the same sort of learning tools. Great example, and one of your questions was like, is AI going to take over? We actually recently had the TensorFlow Dev Summit here in Mountain View, and it was a very popular event, and one of the things about this whole concept of is it taking over is it was a day of learning, but one thing that really stuck out to me was presentation from Lily Peng, a doctor on the brain team. Mm-hmm. And she was explaining how there's the leading cause of the fastest growing cause of blindness is actually diabetic retinopathy. And so it's very preventable. And she was actually explaining how by taking a simple photo of a retina, and then running it through TensorFlow, you could actually get on par with the top doctor. And so it's not just creating the jobs in just TensorFlow development, but it's also creating jobs on the periphery of that and the whole ecosystem. So that's kind of how we look at that.
Gayle, one of the things that you help do is you help you work at this from the interviewee side of things. In this fast-changing world, what are some of the things that you advise in both your books as well as the consulting work that you do? What are the things that you help people try to understand and how to be more flexible in the world that we're dealing with?
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for the idea of leveling the playing field. That some people may walk into the job search with an advantage of going to the right schools or having the right companies on their background, but not everybody has that, obviously. And everybody can do things in their own time. One of the things that's great about the tech industry is that it's actually pretty open-minded about different people's backgrounds. Even the very, very top tech companies who have, in some ways, the most ability to be elitist about people's backgrounds are pretty open to saying, hey, you're self-taught, and that's awesome. You may not have gotten an algorithms class or whatever at MIT or Stanford, but you have learned this stuff on your own time. You've built projects. So I push people a lot to be realistic about what they get in their background, what their background has given them, and find ways of compensating for that, whether that's taking algorithms classes online, whether that's doing a lot of projects on their own, and that is great from a company's perspective too, because they see people who have not only learned the stuff that they need to know for that job, but they've also shown the initiative to do that. And it's a very, very positive thing, actually, to see on someone's background.
Greg, one of the things that you and I talked about earlier was the idea that the issues that we're talking about here aren't just Silicon Valley problems, but national problems. How can the issues that we're talking about here be used to expand the reach of what you do, for example, and the people that you recruit?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very much not a Silicon Valley problem. It is absolutely true that companies like Google and NVIDIA and Apple and Facebook and others are all fighting to get the best talent around AI, right? So if you're here and lucky enough to have a background, maybe to have a nano degree and something having to do with artificial intelligence, it's going to be like lions on a zebra to find the best engineers there to do that. But again, what if you're in other areas, and how do we make that work? It's interesting that our local congressman here, Ro Khanna, I think he was in office about 10 days before he was in our offices saying, what can you do at NVIDIA to help bring your AI expertise into the heartland of America? People are concerned about AI taking away jobs, right? And it's absolutely true that you can't take somebody off of a tractor somewhere and then turn them into an AI developer instantly. But it is true that particularly as we expand into online training and learning, you can make it very widely available to others, and I think that's one key. The second thing about international is that When we look at the research papers that are coming out on artificial intelligence, a very high percentage of them are coming out of China. And we know how many developers there are in India and what a great opportunity it is there. And certainly for self-driving cars, a lot of the leading edge work that's going on right now, to just use self-driving cars as an example, is coming out of Europe. So the opportunities are everywhere, and therefore the need is everywhere. So the question is, what are we doing to make it so that this level of leading edge training is available to everybody? And again, I think that online classes and making things very simply available to everybody is part of it, so that people can have those skills in a lifelong learning way.
What are some of the, Peter, I remember the days at Google where it talked quite openly about its elitist culture. This goes back probably 10 or 15 years ago, but Google, like Amazon, like many companies in high tech, prided themselves on hiring the best and the brightest, and you could expect to have to submit college transcripts and SAT scores in the early days of Google and Amazon to try to get hired. Obviously, the world has shifted in many ways, and companies like Google have gotten much more sophisticated in the way that it hires people into these programs. What are sort of some of the outreach things that Google is trying to do, both in Silicon Valley, but also, outside, and to maybe like loop in sort of some of the people in, say, Michigan, for example?
Right. Well, I'll start out right away with the fact that there are nano-degree students that have been hired into full-time positions now at Google. Mm-hmm. So that tells you a lot.
Right.
And that's partially because, exactly as Gayle mentioned, the nano-degrees are project-based. It's not a knowledge test. You can build your portfolio. So that is happening. That's pretty exciting to me. Like, we've built these programs. We didn't build them as a pipeline into Google, but we built them for really everyone, including our own Google engineers, to take, to skill up on Android and so on. So that's exciting. We have a number of people hired there. In terms of outreach, we're working pretty hard on setting a quality bar that people can sort of understand is a sort of a top-level bar that we drive. It's our developer certification.
Right.
And so developer certification, we rolled out the associate Android developer certification, so that anyone, anywhere, it's online, but it's also performance-based.
All right.
In the sense that you build projects and you show you can debug an app, or you can, so we're pushing more and more towards that. And in the career pavilion later today, we have recruiters from Google, we have people from the certification, so definitely check that out.
Okay. Gayle, what are sort of, is the gap, say, for someone who didn't go to one of the top schools and wants to try to figure out a way into one of these top companies, is the gap too big? What are sort of some of the ways that we can narrow the gap?
Yeah, no, I don't think the gap is too big at all. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, the top companies cannot hire from just the top schools. There aren't enough people there. And even if they hired MIT and Stanford's entire class, and the entire class of the top 10 schools, that would not be enough people. Which I think is part of why they are actually, despite their reputations, they are actually pretty open-minded. When I do work with companies on their hiring process, it's actually the B-tier companies that are a lot more insistent on let's only hire from the top schools. The top companies are let's hire whoever we can. We need every smart developer we can get. And companies, one of the things I've seen shift with the interview process over the last 10, 15 years is not actually the questions themselves. Candidates now are getting the same questions they were getting asked 10 years ago. But the thing that has shifted is much more of understanding that we have to get our candidates ready for the interview process as well. So that comes, very standard across the top tech companies are, the recruiters are saying, go read Cracking the Coding interview. Go, here's our own blog post about the interview process. And some companies, like Facebook, has gone even further, and they have me come in 2 nights a week to teach the same exact material to whatever the next set of candidates coming in, just to help those candidates get ready with the understanding that, look, the interview process has false negatives, and there are some great people getting rejected, and we want to make sure that as many great future employees get an offer as possible. And so I come teach the same class 2 nights a week.
How early should we get involved in this, in the process that you're talking about? I mean, I guess that leads into sort of the do this at the and college level. Here, should we do this STEM at the high versus school liberal level? arts debate? One of the interesting things that are there tweaks that we can make to sort of the existing 15 education system tech is that I think there's we talk a lot about that you guys are seeing about how liberal arts education is easier, less and less relevant, except get access to. One of the things I've noticed is that if you look at a lot of CEOs of tech companies and other,
I think the earlier the better. I think one of the big things people miss often
the Fortune
is
500,
the soft skills.
Many of them
I always
did have
Gayle's
liberal
book
arts
to everyone
degrees.
To,
and
like,
so,
even if it's not a sweet
I'm
software
interested
engineer
in
position,
sort of whether or not
to
we're
read some of the soft
talking
skills,
about
because
getting
you're going to be
people
working with
too
people,
narrow too
you're
soon
going to be working
in terms
in
of
teams,
that discussion.
and there's a lot of things we
do you have
can
any
be
thoughts,
doing
Greg?
in that.
Well,
and you're going to be working.
one is that we
you have to
concentrate
show
a little
that
bit
you've
maybe
been
in this
working on.
discussion
So
around
the
developers
earlier we can do that,
and
of course,
that are engineers.
There are things that don't make a lot of sense. I like some of the nanodegree ideas
I got
that are
7
you're
open
also building your
requisitions for
LinkedIn
marketing
profile
people
in a
right
certain way,
now
and you're
that I
building
would
your
love
resume. So
had
there's
some kind of a
other
background
parts
in
to getting
AI.
hired than
Maybe
just
they took a
the
couple
pure
of courses
knowledge that you
on
need
it,
to
or
have.
on their own time, or maybe they did whatever. So it isn't that. People say the strongest and healthiest dogs are mutts, right? When you can mix the gene pool and have people who have elements of both, you actually have great employees, right? So I don't know that I favor either one as much as I favor a cross between the two of them, and I think people who have both of those skills are going to be the most successful.
Right, Peter?
I would say the same. One of the absolute most critical things that employees need to have is communication skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, you need a more like a whole person, not just a coder. And one of the things that kind of was eye-opening for myself, in India, we have a large pledge program to train 2 million Indian developers. And it seems almost impossible, but we're actually making some great strides there. And these are mobile developers. So if you think of an Android app, often we talk about developers as sort of like the people that write the Java code that compiles into this app, but there's so much more to that entire ecosystem. You have, the assets, the graphics, the video that needs to be created to highlight the app. So there's so many other things in that larger ecosystem that all require nuanced skills, and great communication is key, right?
Exactly. Gayle?
So, I think it's incredibly important for everybody to, regardless of where they're going in their career, to learn how to write well. And that doesn't mean writing a beautiful story. It means be able to write an email, be able to write a basic document describing something in clear, concise language. I think learning how to do public speaking is incredibly important. It won't be important necessarily in the first 2 years of your career, but once it becomes important, it's going to become so important that you're not going to have the time to get that good at it.
Exactly.
And I think it's also important for everybody to learn a comfort with numbers. And that doesn't have to mean calculus. I think very, very few people are ever going to need calculus. But just like be able to work through a practical word problem. I think those things are incredibly important. However, I think the push towards everyone should go get, liberal arts degrees are great, is, I think, misguided. I don't think that liberal arts degrees necessarily teach better writing and communication skills and public speaking than a math and science degree does. I think you can do pretty much every school has liberal arts requirements. And in a lot of ways, engineers are often actually great writers because they're not writing the fluffy stuff. They're getting to the point and saying what needs to be done. So I am actually more on this side of advocating STEM degrees because you get that comfort with math and that confidence with it, but you also hopefully have enough of the public speaking and writing. Which is really, really important.
Although in that context, that means that it's up to the universities to maintain their core requirements and not drop them in favor of letting people start out just taking math and science and not learning how to do any of the soft stuff.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think universities by and large, I don't think universities do a fantastic job for STEM or for liberal arts teaching writing. I don't think they're doing a great job there, but I think you're getting some in either direction, and I don't think it's actually tremendously different.
Right. Are there some things that universities both at the elite level or at not the elite level can do differently, or that you guys are sort of talking to about the way they shift in terms of shifting the way they think about this? I mean, I know, Greg, when you and I were talking a little bit, you were talking about some of the work you were doing with, was it San Jose State?
Yeah, they're an example, and we're early days in discussions with them. But I think we have a program, we call it the GPU Educators Program. We basically have artificial intelligence, deep learning curriculum that we will give to educators. Peter can talk to it, but I think Google does the same thing, or something similar. Where we basically create curriculum and then give it out to the schools so that they can incorporate that. So that's one thing. A second thing is that NVIDIA has something called the Deep Learning Institute, which is just the name that we give to the hands-on developer training that we have. And so one of the things that we've done with San Jose State style schools and also IIT Bombay, top of the top kind of schools, is to hold one-day workshops where students can come in and get this practical, because the schools are really good at teaching theory. They're less good at teaching the applied, learning that you have to actually go build a self-driving car, for instance, which schools have, other than Udacity, have a self-driving car program. But there's a lot of need for that. Tesla's got to go hire engineers, and Audi and Ford and everybody else, right? So we're trying to work with schools to think outside of just whatever their core curriculum is, and to augment that out of industry, where we can come in and then apply extra, very fresh, using the latest versions of TensorFlow or Caffe or whatever it is in terms of AI, very fresh thinking, and give students a hands-on experience that they just can't get as part of the normal curriculum. And then we help them with the normal curriculum too.
Is there a good, for lack of a better, is there a good age at which it makes sense to investigate the kind of super specific training that we're talking about outside of the degree programs? I mean, does it make sense to do it in between high school and college? Does it make sense to do it while you're in college or afterwards? What do you think, Peter?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's about striking the right balance of the right age where there's the interest all of a sudden. Like, for example, when my youngest son was, I think, about 11 or 12, he got really interested in Wireshark, the packet analysis, because it turned out his school was communicating the grades in the clear. And so, but there has to be sort of a driving factor behind something that gets your interest, and all of a sudden there's a practical connection. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, if that doesn't exist, I think it's very hard to get motivated by it. But yeah, everyone's different, and I think it's just more, and with everything being available online, it's so easy now to get into it. You don't have to wait for a class to start saying, okay, well, at 10 years old, we start doing this, but everyone is on their own. But yeah, I think it's based on a lot of different factors.
Right. I was going to say, let the record reflect that despite all the advancements in technology that we've made over the years, 10-year-olds are the same, from generation to generation to generation to generation. They all want to figure out a way to change their grades without the teacher knowing.
Did not actually change the grades.
I didn't say, just saying he wondered about it. Go ahead, Gayle.
Oh, I think you can learn this stuff at any age. If you decide in college that this is a career direction you want to go, that's great. If you decide 10 years, 20 years after college, that's great too. The major thing I would tell to a college student is just, hey, be careful if you start going down some path because that's what you think you want to do right now. Don't neglect everything else too because, most people actually, whatever career path they think they want in college, most people aren't doing that in 10 years. So stay well-rounded.
Right, right. Trying to think, we've got 5 minutes left. I would like to open it up for questions. I don't think we have mics, but I'd love to try to see if we can get a couple of questions from the audience, if that's okay, if you don't mind yelling. I'll repeat the question.
What do you see as prospects for those that have advanced more in their career, managers, CIOs? What do you see as prospects coming for those advanced in their careers?
That's a good question. Thank you. I don't think AI or lifelong learning changes one of the fundamental tenets of how business works, which is the higher up you go, the fewer jobs there are, right? So there's only going to be one CIO in a company usually, and so on and so forth. So, those opportunities get lower. But I think to the heart of your question, I very much was not talking about just entry-level positions for new engineers coming out of school and coming in. I didn't get an opportunity to comment on what's the right age. But I'm over 50, so I hope that you don't have to be in high school to learn stuff too, right? So here, I'm all in for the old guys. Because I do think that people who are mid-career, maybe this is the answer to your question, I hope. People who are mid-career have every opportunity to be able to pick up some new skills and come in because we need people, I'm going to guess that Amazon and Microsoft and Apple and Facebook and Google and others need people who have that experience that they've gotten through their life experience and their job experience, but they've just augmented it with some fresh skills. And so when you're having a conversation with a hiring manager, you can speak extemporaneously about some of the latest software developments or the way things are happening in the world. And you can pick that up in a lot of places, several years after college. And I think that creates opportunity everywhere.
So I could go get a self-driving car degree and you would hire me. I'll take that as a no. Anybody else?
Hi. I'm curious about how AI, as we're moving more and more towards cognitive technologies, I'm curious as to the role that AI is going to play as far as psychology. As a developer today, we're writing code for AI, but really how I see it is that in 10 years, we're really going to be psychologically manipulating these machines into doing what we actually want them to do. How do you feel about that?
Anyone want to take that?
I will, I guess. If I understood your question correctly, and I'm not sure I heard it very well, but it was about if you're developers now and then AI is happening, how are those skills transferred when you're not writing code in the same way for AI? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. People sometimes say that AI is software writing software. Mm-hmm. And it is true that it is a very different thing to be able to learn to manipulate and work with a neural network or a training set than it is to sit there and write a whole bunch of code. If you think about all the different things that need to be taken into consideration for simple things like speech, right? You know, I'm the biggest Amazon Alexa fanboy that there is, and you know, I just love being able to interact with my Echo and Alexa, and a lot of that is around understanding speech and being able to hear that. Well, there is a significant amount of development work and research that companies like Amazon have to put into in order to create the training systems, and it's constantly evolving. And what's happening on the inference side right there at the device. And I think if you have coding skills, and if you understand information theory, or if you're a data scientist, you're right in the right strike zone, even if the way that you're going to accomplish that might be a little bit different. So I would feel very good about developers who are classic computer science developers being able to move into this new world and just slide right in. And I don't think that there will be a lowering in the number of jobs at all. I think there's going to be more jobs and more opportunity. Let me just, if I can take 30 more seconds here.
Thank you.
I'm working with Procter & Gamble, and P&G has this new consumer application called Olay Skin Advisor, and a woman can take a selfie, and then it uses AI to understand, based around that, what her skin health is, and it tells her what her skin age is. That's a gutsy call. And then can recommend Olay products, you know, to work on different aspects of, you know, fine lines, wrinkles, or whatever. But like, dial back the clock a few years. Do you think that Procter & Gamble had a team of people who were developers that are working on code to do stuff like that? No. And so all of the people that are working on things like that, and that's just one example. I could give you 100 more. It's creating opportunity in the marketplace, sure.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists. We're done.